The Nicephorian Dynasty. The Nicephorian Dynasty was founded on October 31st, 802 AD, when Empress Irene's former finance minister Nicephorus seized power with the aid of the Greek Orthodox Church and the Eastern Roman nobles. His family ruled Constantinople for 11 years. Nicephorus took an empire that was being threatened by the Bulgarians in the north, the Franks in the west, and the Arab Caliphate in the east. During his reign, he reorganized the provinces once again and tightened the purse strings, along with imposing heavy taxes upon the populace and church to fund his military, whom he felt needed to be beefed up and expanded due to his campaign to strengthen the empire's borders. Less than a year into his reign, General Bardanes revolted against the emperor. He was a strong supporter of Empress Irene, but despite this, Nicephorus named him commander of the army of the Anatolia. Bardanes soon grew disgruntled due to the emperor's meddling in domestic affairs and his restructuring of the military. He tried to march his army into Constantinople and overthrow Nicephorus, but his army ran off, leaving him high and dry when his two strongest supporters and future emperors, Leo and Michael, were bribed by the emperor, and they pulled their soldiers out of the rebellion. Bardanes was later arrested by his soldiers loyal to the crown and was blinded before being sent off to exile in a monastery. Later that year, he began to negotiate a peace treaty with the new Holy Roman Empire and their king Charlemagne after the rift that was caused when he was crowned Emperor of the Romans in 800 AD by Pope Leo III. The treaty, known as the Peace of Nicephorus, acknowledged Charlemagne as an emperor, but not as Emperor of the Romans. The peace between the two empires wouldn't last long, as they would begin hostilities a few years later over land in the Italian peninsula. Nicephorus' problems in the east rose in 804 AD when he stopped paying the Abbasid Caliphate tribute, which was negotiated years earlier by Empress Irene, and started a war. The Abbasid invaded Anatolia and slowly chipped away at the empire's eastern frontier. After several major defeats, Nicephorus and the Abbasid settled their differences with a peace treaty that forced the Eastern Romans to pay an annual tribute in 806 AD. Nicephorus agreed to this because he faced an even bigger threat from the north, from the Bulgarian Empire. In 807 AD, Nicephorus began his long military campaign against the Bulgarians, which would eventually end up costing his life. His first military action occurred when he led an army into Adrianople and from there tried to reclaim lost territory around the city. But his soldiers refused to venture into Bulgarian land. The Bulgarians started to raid the Eastern Roman frontier in 808 AD, wreaking havoc upon the border towns. Khan Krum, leader of the Bulgarians, launched a massive attack upon the Eastern Roman fortress city of Serdica in 809 AD. After a long siege, the Eastern Roman army surrendered, but they were slaughtered, despite the Khan promising them safe passage back to Constantinople. Hearing the news about the loss of Serdica and the slaughter of over 6,000 soldiers who surrendered caused Nicephorus to declare that he'll crush the Bulgarians for good, and for the next year, the emperor gathered up, trained, and armed a military force that was over 22,000 strong. By the end of May 811 AD, the massive army marched towards Bulgaria, and by the month of July, they were plundering towns in the region. Khan Krum tried to negotiate a peace treaty with the Eastern Romans when reports of a larger army was creating havoc on his land, but Nicephorus refused to grant him an audience. The emperor's larger army marched straight for the Bulgarian capital Pliska, and after some resistance from Krum's elite soldiers, the Eastern Roman army reached the city on July 20th, 811 AD, and sacked the city and pillaged the surrounding countryside. Khan Krum tried once again to get an audience with Nicephorus, and had a message for him that read, "Here you are. You have won. So take what you please and leave in peace." Nicephorus continued to ignore Krum's plea for a peace treaty, and according to writer and patrician Michael the Syrian, Nicephorus, the emperor of the Romans, walked into Bulgarian lands. He was victorious and killed a great number of them. He reached their capital, took it over, and devastated it. His savagery went to such a point that he had their small children brought out, tied to the ground, and crushed with millstones. The Eastern Roman soldiers looted and plundered, burned down the unharvested fields, cut the tendons of the oxen, and slaughtered the sheep and pigs. Nicephorus' large army was defeated on July 26, 811 AD, when they were slaughtered en masse by an ambush set up by Khan Krum and a ragtag army made up of civilians, avars, and veteran soldiers who set up a trap along the mountain passes that led from Pliska towards the Eastern Roman border. The surviving Eastern Roman soldiers carried off the emperor's son, Crown Prince Stauricious, who was wounded in the battle. Nicephorus, however, was found standing on top of a dung pile by the Bulgarian soldiers. He was either killed in battle or taken captive and later executed by Krum. After his death, Khan Krum later had Nicephorus' head removed and used it as a wine goblet. Stauricious was named the new emperor a day later after it was reported that his father was officially dead. His spine was severed during the battle, and those around him found that the gravely wounded young man was in no condition to lead an empire. He was left paralyzed from the waist down, and those around him felt that he was too infirm to continue on as ruler, but he refused to abdicate his crown despite the fact that he could die at any time, and he had no children. Stauricious tried to make his wife, Theophano, his chosen successor, but the church and the nobility did not want to have another female leading the Eastern Roman Empire, so he named his brother-in-law, Michael, as his successor and abdicated. On October 2nd, 811 AD, Michael I was crowned Eastern Roman Emperor after he received support from the church and the nobility. During Michael's short reign, he lowered the high taxes that Nicephorus raised upon the populace and the church, opened up peace talks with the Holy Roman Empire, and continued to acknowledge Charlemagne as emperor, but not as one of the Romans. Peace was also brought back to the Italian peninsula as well. However, war between the Eastern Romans and the Bulgarians started up once again after Michael refused to sign a peace treaty that was offered by Khan Krum. The two sides fought at the Battle of Versinikia, which ended in favor of the Bulgarians. After the humiliating defeat and fearing for his life, Michael abdicated on July 11, 813 AD. His sons were all castrated to end any future attempt from them to try and claim the crown, and they were all exiled to various monasteries. This ended the Nicephorian Dynasty. His successor was the former general Leo the Armenian, who was crowned on July 12, 813 AD. Thanks for watching another episode of the Byzantine history of the Eastern Roman Empire. My name is Joseph Ulibas, and I hope to see you soon. And if you enjoyed this series, please subscribe to this channel.